do is what I would suggest you do is so we all said okay. I would agree with what Keaton said, which is as soon as you turn it on, just say okay, the recording's on, and everybody has agreed. And if anybody's not agreeing, say now, and then you have it all recorded. It's documented.
Yeah.
We're all
Okay.
Sure, it's
Well,
like
on
you've
that
done it
note,
before.
on that note,
I'm in California, land of litigation.
good point. On that note, is everyone okay if we record this session tonight? Especially if you end up appearing either in voice or in name on
Yes.
the
Yes.
on the recording.
Yes.
Okay, so one,
Yes.
2, 3.
Thumbs up.
Thumbs up from Freddie.
Yes, no problem.
Yes.
Yes from Chinook. Birch.
Whatever
Tim.
The correct PC.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes from Tim.
Yes, from me.
Yes from
Yes,
Anita.
from Keaton.
And a yes from Birch. All right, good enough.
All yeses.
All yeses. So we're gonna roll with it, and they can find me if they want. Good luck. I can run pretty fast, and I'm really at home in the woods. So let's
Okay,
do this.
I'm also gonna should we record this on Zoom too?
Yeah, go ahead.
Or
We
no?
could that way
Yeah?
we can compare the two and see which one
Yeah,
works
we're
out
gonna
better.
see what that thing records. Okay,
Mhm.
I'd be
so I'm
stuffing my
recording,
face, just so you know.
and everybody's okay with this being recorded.
Yes.
Everybody's good with it. Yes. All
Good,
right.
Good. Thank you. Let's
Okay,
do it.
cool. Okay, Andrew, I think maybe you start, and if anybody shows up, then we just let them in.
All right. Let
Excited.
me share my
Just
screen here.
humiliate them massively for being late. Well, maybe where's your bat, Andrew?
I
It's
feel
in
like-
the closet over here.
I feel like you should have said that before we started recording.
No, I did it. I did it before we started recording. I did my bit because that way, there's no record of what I said.
Smart.
Yeah.
Plausible deniability. Hold on a
This
This
second
is
guy's
here.
good.
great.
So far, so good.
Okay. Everybody see my screen?
Awesome.
Does it say making software without programming on it?
Yep.
Yep. Okay. All right. Well, I guess first and foremost, thanks for coming. I appreciate you guys taking the time. We're trying to make all of these happen more and more often within North America, but hopefully this will be fun. What I want to talk to you tonight is making software without programming. But I guess really what I'm actually trying to do is talk to you about how to work with programmers, especially if you yourself are not a programmer. I've chosen these 4 topics to kind of talk about. These are ones that I have some thoughts on. There are obviously countless other topics that could be covered, but there's only so much time, and I wanted to keep this, around about 30 minutes so that we have time for questions and discussions and everything. I'll make sure that we have time for that at the end. I'm happy to go through whatever you might want. And also, as we get into it, if for those of you who don't know how to get in touch with me on email or Discord or whatever, I will also try to make sure that that's available for everyone to use, because I am open to chat about it. Now, I think pretty much everyone on this call currently knows who I am. However, since we are going to record this, I wanted to just do a quick introduction of who I am. And my name's Andrew Mail. You can see some of my socials and such on the left side there, but most importantly, I am a self-taught programmer for quite a few years now. I build everything from websites and mobile apps to video games, healthcare software, inventory systems. I even built an email spam system once upon a time. I'm not proud of it. I do apologize, but it did happen. I can't really pretend that it didn't. I either am or I am becoming a serial entrepreneur. I had my first business at the age of 16. I've had thus far 6 businesses. However, if you include the online radio station, maybe you could say it was 7, though I think that radio station was pretty illegal, so we should probably keep it at 6. Yeah, let's keep it at 6. Most of those businesses were actually profitable, but none of them were hugely successful. I have this bad habit of kind of trying to hoard the technology that I create, which is nice for me because I get all of my fun little toys and everything, but it does kind of limit their ability to be as successful as they deserve to be, which is, of course, one of the reasons that I joined Power MBA, trying to turn that around a little bit and give them a real chance at it. some of my more boring hobbies. I really, for some reason, really enjoy studying economic theory. I also enjoy reading government legislation. Before you ask, I don't know why I like those things. I just do. I didn't choose it. A little bit more exciting things. I enjoy climbing mountains, especially if it's really cold. Play a lot of sports. I played American football, everyone else's football. And most recently, I actually became a hockey goalie, which everyone tells me it's kind of a masochistic thing to do. I gotta tell you, I play in the lowest level of skill possible, so nobody's really hitting the puck that hard, and I have a lot of pads on, so it's not that bad. Anyway, yeah, like I said before, I'll try and make sure that all my contact info gets shared out somehow because, again, a lot of hobbies. Always happy to talk about stuff, so I just want to make sure I'm available for everyone. But yeah, that's about it for me. So let's move on, and let's talk about what we're actually here to talk about. Programmers. Which, of course, this is what every programmer looks like. None of us look like that, to be honest with you. But what is a programmer? Programmers, we get lots of names. Programmer, developer, hacker, coder, software engineer, of course, computer scientist. I worked for an ad agency in Charlotte, North Carolina for a while, and one of the founders, she constantly referred to me as a magician. And to be clear, I did not like that, and I told her that several times. Didn't seem to stop her, so I guess magician is another way that we're referred to, no matter whether or not we want to be. But I think the bottom line is, what programmers really are is we're the people who try to make computers work for us, and us being all of humans in this case. A lot of the time we do succeed. We definitely fail sometimes too. Most people seem to only really remember the failures, but that's okay. It comes with the job, and we're all pretty happy about it. Over the years, I think we as programmers, it's difficult to argue that we have not become crucial on almost every aspect of the world's operation. Doesn't matter if it's a new business, an old business. Pretty much everyone these days, through either 0 degrees of separation or 1, work with programmers. And to the point where if anyone has not worked with programmers in their profession, I'm actually really desperately curious to know what you do. If for no other reason than for the fact that, well, maybe there's some opportunity there. But yeah, programmers, we're kind of important. And, not everybody is a programmer, though. So really what I want to talk about, and we'll start with this, is I want to start going through the things that you may encounter that might be difficult for you if you're not a programmer and you have to be around programmers. So to get started, we'll talk about talent. Specifically, we're going to talk about kind of finding talent. And I will say this up front. There is no single tip. There is no group of tips that is going to enable you to find great developers every single time. It's not going to happen. I've been involved in lots of stages of businesses. I've been on different stages of hiring, and I am a programmer myself of many, many years, and I still get it wrong sometimes because hiring programmers in at least one sense is no different than hiring any other skilled position, or I guess really any position. You're hiring a person, and people are at a certain level unpredictable. So if you're hoping that I'm going to say, here's this fun little formula that you can use to get it right every time, I'm so sorry. That's not what I have for you. But, I did want to kind of break down some of the reasons that I think it is difficult for non-programmers to interview programmers and kind of determine which ones are going to be good to work with. So why is it difficult? It's difficult because, it doesn't really matter what's going on. You may have a common set of things that you're going to look for, but how you use those and what they are interpreted as to mean for good or bad candidates changes with your business. It changes with the type of business, changes with the stage of the business, it changes with the size of the business or even the product. I tried to think through this and kind of break it down into some common ones, and this is honestly the best that I could get. But if you consider that you want to, in some shape or form, be looking for candidates who are knowledgeable about technology, They make good decisions, specifically toward how they implement technology and build things for you. They understand your problem, and problem in this case is kind of your business's problem domain, the thing that you're trying to solve for your customers. And then do they make things quickly, and do they make them good? And you might see some of these and you maybe think, well, I hear what you're saying, Andrew. Maybe they are a little bit different, but honestly, I always want someone to do quality code, and I always want them to do it fast. And I could tell you with confidence, you are very wrong. You do not want that all the time. You tend to find this out the hard way too. So maybe take the opportunity to learn from me. Early on in a business, quality is almost entirely worthless. It doesn't make a lot of sense to put effort into being high quality at the very beginning stages, especially with new products, just because what you're actually trying to do is you're trying to test quickly. We talk in Power MBA with the lean startup and everything. We talk about test the hypotheses and everything. And, quality code is wonderful. However, if you're really focused on quality code, you're not going to test as quickly. So there is a balance to be had. And of course, later on in the life cycle, as you get to sort of the end of growth and into maturity and everything, well, now all of a sudden a developer being fast is pretty irrelevant. You want them to make good code that's not going to break and piss off your existing customers because, hey, now you want to retain and not gain and educate people on a problem they didn't know they had, et cetera, et cetera. I can go through pretty much any of these, like looking at problem awareness, understanding your problem, your business's problem. That's something that you definitely want early on if you can get it. However, as you grow, as your business grows, as your product grows, you will find yourself caring a lot less about that because now all of a sudden you need people to focus on very specific, very important technical problems. And it's not that them learning about your problem is bad. It's that you don't really care about that as much when you're looking to hire them. So, again, there's lots of examples here, and I could probably go on with these for quite a while. There's no one way to solve this. However, if you are a brand new business, you're non-technical, and you're looking for the right place to start, we do have one suggestion. Find a technical advisor. It's one of the biggest things that you can do for helping yourself and your business be successful. And I'm not saying that it would be easy. It can be hard to find a reliable technical advisor. However, it is worth the effort. And the reason for that is if you find a technical advisor that can kind of watch over your decisions from a technical perspective and guide you into the right general direction that way, you can focus without any fear on what you, the non-developer, should look for when you're looking at hiring people. And what should you look for? You should look for mindset. So mindset over skill set, mindset versus skill set, however you wanted to talk about it. The difference is skill set is usually the specific know-how that a developer has. What technological things are they familiar with? What technologies have they worked with? What languages have they used? Yada, yada, yada. If you're not a developer, if you're not a technological person, you should not be trying to gauge people based off of this. And that's where someone like a technical advisor can come into play. What you can do, however, without having technical know-how, is you can look at someone's mindset. And, mindset, I usually say it's how they approach unknowns or how they approach difficult situations and everything. Skill set can change. It should grow over time because over time they should just keep learning new things. But mindset tends to be a lot more stationary, I guess. Just not saying that as a bad thing, but most people are born with a mindset, and hopefully you find the ones who mesh with you well. So how do I focus on that when I'm looking to hire people? So I break it down into two things. I will ask them questions to try and ferret out how they approach problem solving, and I'll ask them questions to figure out how they approach difficult situations. I'm really just looking to listen to their answer and listen to how they're able to tell me how they do things. So for example, for problem solving, I might ask a question like, how do you learn a new technology? Or how do you weigh pros and cons before making a decision? How do you handle a difficult relationship with coworkers? And really what I'm looking to hear though is like, are they able to sort of elaborate the way that they go through their problem solving? Is it something that they've thought about and they know, well, okay, well, if I'm faced with something I don't know, obviously I'm going to look here and then I'm going to do this and then I'll try these things. And someone who does that is going to be a lot more attractive to me than someone who says, I don't know, I'll figure it out on the internet. I don't know. I don't really worry about stuff like that. Again, this is a mindset question. I'm looking for how do they think about getting new information, about approaching situations they don't know the answer to immediately. And then the other side, difficult situations. These are my favorite questions because I love asking these every time. And I'll ask them, I'll just say, tell me about a time you had to change plans at the last moment. Tell me about a time you took on a significant challenge you weren't expecting. And my absolute favorite, I ask this of every person that I interview, tell me about a time you failed at something. And this is so important because really for me, I would say if you're not going to ask many questions, these are the types of ones you have to ask. Just no excuses. You have to ask these because if you ask someone about a time they failed, you're going to learn so much about how they are as a person. If they come at it and they say, oh, well, this happened and that happened and I didn't get support from my CEO and my teammates weren't doing what they were supposed to do. And you just kind of notice, you're like, wow, they are not taking any responsibility here. That kind of worries me a little bit. Whereas if what you hear instead is something along the lines of, hey, such and such happened and, if all other things being equal, I think I could have done better with this, and this. And I mean, we'll never know. It happened and I just have to remember it and try to learn from it. Oh man, when somebody answers like that, I try to hire them pretty much immediately. I think I actually get pretty obnoxious about it, but I mean, the reality is you have to. Like when I'm listening to people answer that question, what I'm really looking for is things that are going to make them effective team members and really have the right mindset again for approaching these problems that they don't even know they're going to have. Are they humble? Are they adaptable? Are they honest? Are they introspective? These are all characteristics that I'm going to look for, desperately going to look for when I'm looking to hire someone. And you don't have to know technology to ask these kinds of questions and get this kind of information. So if you're not a technology person, you're looking to hire, this is the sort of stuff you want to talk about. Plain and simple. All right. So that's enough for that one. Move on to the second one. Communicating. Speaking with your devs, just as with any skilled position, you have to do more than just hire the right candidate. You need to work well with them. And I spent a while kind of trying to break this down and see what categories this came in and what the roots of the problems were or anything. And I sort of, in the process of making this presentation, I've come to a conclusion that I think most of these problems come down to one thing. It's all difficult because of a language barrier, right? Language is at the root of anything, of everything, really, especially in the situation we're talking about. So, let's say you're building a marketing stand-up, right, or a startup, and you're a marketing person. You know everything there is to know about marketing. You know about marketing technology. You know about the strategies and all this stuff. And you go and you talk to someone like me. I don't know marketing, so you could say a lot of things to me, and I'm gonna smile. I'm gonna nod. And go, okay, that sounds great. And you're going to say, well, what do you think of that? How would you build that system? And I'm going to throw a whole bunch of stuff at you that, quite frankly, will probably mean very little to you. It's just the nature of the beast, right? Both sides of us can get super lost in the other's terminology, the paradigms that we use, even just like the constructs that we use for thinking about things. And I really genuinely think that this is at the root of so many problems that we experience as devs working with non-tech people, and I think the other way around too. So, as I'm thinking about all this, I thought back to some stuff that happened to me before, and really the only solution that I've ever experienced is basically just enduring pain. Some of my worst technical decisions and implementations have come because I wasn't given the whole picture of a feature until I had already built the wrong feature. And when I look back on these times, the reason it happens is because there is a history leading up to that moment where there were miscommunications and everybody started holding back more information because they said, well, you know what? I don't have time to get through to them on this one. I don't have time to do this. Maybe if I just give them like just the idea, we can find a way to meet along the way. And one of the more recent startups that I worked for in the past, 5 to 8 years, I had a huge problem with this. My product manager, my product owner, whatever you want to call him, he and I, we built this huge feature. It took us a month and a half to build. And at the end of the month and a half, he took a look at what I had done, and he said, this isn't what we need. What do you mean? It does the things that you said. He said, but, oh no, it's not what we need. Oh no. And we realized in that moment, neither of us had actually been talking to each other correctly. We ended up having to do a complete redesign. And I wish I could say that this was like a unique thing. I know it's not a unique thing. I know plenty of other devs who have been through similar situations. I've been through it much more than once. It just happens. So, the more that I thought about it, what do? You just don't hold back. Push through the pain, deal with the pain, endure the pain, and get to the bottom of it. We, for that instance in particular, the way that we ended up rebuilding it, it only took us a month the second time. Yay. The way we rebuilt it is I taught my product owner how to do truth tables, and he taught me a whole bunch of stuff about marketing. It took us most of that month to get to the point where we were speaking the same language for most of the time, and then it took us a week and a half to build the feature. It should have taken a week and a half to build the feature in the first place, but we didn't put the time in to being patient with each other and giving each other the ability to learn and everything by being thorough and explicit to the point where we were talking the same language. So, this is the reason as I'm thinking about all these things, and there's plenty more examples in my past, but as I'm thinking about all of them, this was very consistent. As people got tired of not being understood and being misinterpreted, we started not saying everything that we needed to say. And hey, look at that. We just wasted a month and a half, 2 months worth of time. And nobody wants to do that when you're running a startup. That's pretty expensive. So, I will say this, that product manager and I, that was so painful that we still joke to this day that if we never work together again, it's because of that moment. Even though it was a huge turning point for the company and the project. Everything started going a lot better after that. But, whew, man, that was rough. Anyway, great. So communicate. Let's go to the next one. So next up is architecture. This one and the next one I'm going to do a little bit more quickly, I hope. I mostly just want to talk about, what this is, why it's important, how much of it you should use. Go through it quickly and, well, let's just get into it. So what is architecture? This is one of those things, I don't know about other professions, but I could tell you there are a lot of things in engineering that, depending on who you ask, you're going to get very different definitions. And it gets really frustrating, gets really old. You'll do searches and everything. You'll find really nice fancy words like, fundamental structures of a software system. Yes, I know exactly what that means. Nobody knows what that means. It says nothing. So the thing that I've always presented it to people as is the foundation. If you imagine that your product is a building, right? Architecture is the foundation and makes it really easy to convey kind of the importance, right? If you're assuming that your product is a building, it's a house, right? Okay, well, you can build a house on just dirt. People did that for a long time. They don't tend to be as sturdy as if you put them on, say, a slab of concrete. Or if you live in a flood zone, put them on top of, big long poles or whatever. I don't know. Depends on where you are. You change the look of it, you change the materials, but the bottom line is, it's a really important, a really crucial piece of your overall building. And that's how I think everybody needs to approach architecture for software development. So, all right, still pretty vague definition. I'm sorry. The problem is if I get into specifics of this, I'm going to say something and somebody like Birch is going to say, well, that's not exactly always true. And he's going to be right. He's going to be totally right. So we're going to keep it vague. Just bear with me as we keep this one a little abstract, and let's go through here. So why is architecture important? I'm sorry, Birch. I didn't really warn you that I was going to call you out like that. Why is architecture important? Solid architectural thinking. Again, trying to think of ways to incorporate that foundation into making your product, your building. It can have some really fantastic benefits. You look at a situation, your product has the ability to be a lot more stable over the long term, so fewer bugs, hopefully fewer bad feedback sessions with users. It increases the speed of development long term. As you build a good architecture, you make it easier to add things and remove things from the product. Everybody wins in that scenario. And, if you do it correctly, you also end up with a faster product. It just performs better. And these are all great. I would also like to note, if you go for that mindset first approach to hiring people, it's going to help with this stuff too. So, that's kind of fun, isn't it? Yeah, everything goes around in full circle. But being fair, architecture is work. And because it takes away from feature work, there are costs. We call them disadvantages. You're not doing feature development when you're doing architecture work. You're getting ready to do feature development. So you do slow down your development work when you do architecture. It is a cost. It's worth it in a certain percentage, but it's a cost. And as a cautionary thing beyond that, architecture is still software. It can still be done poorly. And if you do architecture poorly, you can set yourself up in a situation where you're actually in a worse situation than you would have maybe even if you didn't do architecture. Because, all products, all software over time eventually gets to a point where either it's retired or it's rewritten. And one of your goals as a software engineer, a solutions architect, et cetera, one of your goals is to put that off as long as possible. You don't want to do that any sooner than you have to because it's very expensive. And, you build up things, we call them technical debt, which if you don't know what it is, oversimplified, think of it as code or processes that need to be removed from your system but haven't been. So if you do architecture the wrong way, some of that tech debt can be baked into your system. And then the only way you can get rid of it is if you completely redo your architecture, which sometimes means completely redoing your application. And that's no good. Nobody likes that. Again, big money, bad times. So, with all this, there's good advantages to it. There's important disadvantages to consider. What's your role as the non-tech person for this? Well, you need to kind of be the person who is providing general guidance on how much a dev should be thinking about this for where you are in your business. When I'm running a new product, depending on the product, I might go as far as saying, for the first couple months, 40% of my time might be architectural work and 60% will be feature work. However, it varies, right? It depends on what you're trying to do. And that I generally don't come on to startups until they've already done some testing of their hypotheses and everything, and they are pretty set on what they want to build as a long-term product. If you're in the early stuff, it probably is going to be very different from that. Maybe you're going to say, honestly, if you're doing more than 10% architectural work, we're probably doing too much right now because we don't know which direction we're going. Just, know that you as a non-tech person, you have to know it exists, know it's a concern that's always there. If you have multiple developers, make sure they're being collaborative when you do this, and just sort of give them the space to do this when it seems necessary. And, make them explain it to you. Go through that communication stuff, which is also fun. Anyway, architecture is very important. Bottom line, just don't overdo it. I probably could have said both of those slides in just that sentence, actually, now that I think about it. Oh, tough luck for you. Moving on, let's talk about, finally, operations. What are operations? Just like with architecture and anything else, there's a lot of possible definitions, right? But in this one, I'm going to highlight a couple things. These are specific things that I consider to be operations stuff. When you do quality assurance tooling, you do infrastructure management, delivery and analysis. These are all things that I think really what they boil down to is they try and make the developer experience better. And what is developer experience? Just think of it as anything you can do to make it so that your developers have an easier life and can focus more on working on actual code and not, pushing things out to clients or, getting you reports on how they're doing. If it makes it easier for the devs to get started, easier to deliver, it's good for their experience as a developer experience. Just like with architecture, you want to make sure that they get time to work on this, yes, but this one is a little bit more specific. Well, hold on. Let's talk about just kind of some of the benefits quickly. So why is it important? It enables a ton of things, but just to highlight a couple here, having these systems in place, it reduces the time it takes for developers to iterate on bug fixes and new features, which means you can get to the feedback portion of the cycle a lot faster than you would without the operations stuff in place. If you implement the right tools, you make it easier on yourself and your devs to kind of track what's going on with the code base, how active they've been. You can see how many bugs have been found and fixed. You can see how often releases are being pushed and being pulled back. And, you can get stats on all these things. Heck, for that matter, you can use them to do stuff with like statistics and everything for reporting back usage from your end users, right? Maybe you can do testing automation. So there's a certain number of things that you can have computers test for you automatically so that you or the developer doesn't have to go in and click the button every time a new update comes. You just go, you know what? That is beneath me. I would like the computer to do that. And that's fantastic because, hey, who doesn't love it when you don't have to do the things that are just stupid and repetitive? Those are good times, right? We all like that. There's a ton of benefits that you can get out of these things. And really it comes down to like all the different systems that you use. Hopefully this gets the idea across though. To get to a little bit of a concrete thing, to go back to kind of how I do things for just a second here. What I will often do when I come into a new project is I just tell the founders that the first 2 to 3 weeks, I'm not doing any code. I'm doing all of this. I do all this operation stuff. And I set up things. We have stuff called CI/CD, continuous integration, continuous deployment, or delivery, whatever you want to call it. Static analysis, whatever. All of these things. And what they're really there for is so that from that point forward, once they're implemented, I don't have to worry about telling you if I've finished some code and something has been pushed up to be tested, because you will be told. You will be told automatically. I don't have to tell you that there was an issue with some of the tests. You will be told automatically. And I can tell you with 100%, it's happened 100% of the time. Every time that I've done this, I've gotten pushback from the founders who I was working with. Every time I tell them to, very politely, mind you, I tell them to shove it. And I do it anyway. And then within a month or two, they go, I got to tell you, this is awesome. Because, geez, I know exactly what you're working on right now. I'm like, yeah, that is pretty cool, isn't it? I say that this stuff is about developer experience and making it better for your developers, but I guess the good news is it does a lot more than that. It does a lot for you as well, the non-technical person. There are obviously tons of things to talk about here, but I think that's more than enough. So with that, I'm just going to say thank you for listening, and why don't we open this up, and if you guys have any questions or anything you want to talk about, let's do it.
First of all, man, Andrew, that was really good. Your presentation skills are awesome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, you would make it in Apple, by the way. I mean, that was an Apple minimalistic, not a lot of crap on the thing, but good poignant sense. So that was good. I would like you to answer Keaton's question, which I agree as well.
Okay.
It's interesting.
I need to get caught up on these here.
most of
Actually,
it's
we were
jokes
just going
about
back and forth, but
Birch.
Keaton, go for it.
Yeah.
Most of it's jokes about Birch. But
Be nice to
Birch,
Birch.
you
Poor Birch had no idea I was going to do that because I just decided to do it on the spot.
you were amazing, Birch.
Thank you. I tried really hard. I put a lot of effort into it.
So, okay, do you have a preferred project management system that you wish employers would use to manage development projects? Yeah, that is actually that's a tough question. Jira is actually the one that I use the most. And I've put so much time into Jira that I know how to use it. And it's really easy for me to make it useful for other people. However, I also don't think it's the best one because the amount of time it took me to learn how to do all that stuff, it took me years. So unless you have someone like me who is willing to put in that time in that first 2 to 3 weeks and just be like, don't worry, I'm going to set this up for everyone, and then you just have to use it. If you don't have that, then something like, I don't know, like Monday or Asana or ClickUp, they're pretty reasonable alternatives. And, the reality is you just got to find something that works for you. Do something that is going to fit into your workflow. A lot of people make a big deal out of you should use this workflow and you should do that one. And we do it all over the place. They're like, oh, you have to be agile. No, you don't have to be agile. You need to take the appropriate lessons from agile and you need to apply them correctly to yourself and your team. But if you're being so much of a zealot that you just do everything that everyone else says, well, you better be really similar to those other people that say that. Because if you're not, well, best of luck to you, sir. So, yeah, I mean, I've used a lot of ClickUp, and I didn't like it at first, but I have to give them credit. They have put a lot of work into it, and by the time I stopped using it, I was no longer grumbling that much about it anymore. So I give them credit. They're actually doing a pretty good job with that fast iteration and everything. I do wish they would fix Gantt charts, but that's neither here nor there. So yeah, Jira is mine, but ClickUp, maybe Monday, and Asana is like a simple, slightly better Trello, I think, than anything. Well, Asana's not even really a Trello, is it? They don't even do cards, do they?
Andrew, to validation to your point about foundation, the reason why I have such a repelling to Jira, of course, it was with a hardware company trying to be software-ish. It was set up so bad.
Mm-hmm.
And there was no across the board. It was set up in Switzerland, and then they never did it. They did it maybe right, but never had a uniform way. And to your point about foundation architecture, after that, it was just a shit show, pardon my language. It was, and that's why I had such a bad taste in my mouth about it. But I would say, yes, anything that you could set up well. But there's a good validation to your point about architecture and taking the time to set it up and make it right. Otherwise, it was just miserable.
Yeah. I guess that's actually an important point. These terms, I've explained these terms to you in software engineering perspectives. They probably very reasonably exist outside of software engineering, and I'm just ignorant of that at the moment. But yeah, no, I mean, Jira is great. Jira is a beast. The only thing that I think is better than Jira in terms of its functionality might actually be Microsoft Project. But the problem is to use Jira is difficult. Using Microsoft Project basically requires you to focus on only one thing in your life, and that is using Microsoft Project. So unless that's your goal, unless your goal is to be a project manager, don't use Microsoft Project. And, with Jira, if you have the talent in-house for it, or you feel like going through the process of learning it, awesome. Otherwise, ClickUp might be more friendly. And then, Monday or Asana after that. Yeah.
So I have a question about that, being a product manager. So, you have Jira, and then you have Microsoft Project, as you mentioned, right?
Mm-hmm.
I thought Asana was a solution to that, like to both of them.
They're all solutions to each other.
Right.
They all think that they're the solution to I mean, there's a freaking billboard up for ClickUp on Route 93 in Boston. I never would have thought I'd see that in my life. But, their thing is they're like, we'll save you a day a week. I'm like, I don't think you will. but I appreciate the attitude. Like I like the confidence. Good for you. They all think they're a solution to each other, and I guess maybe depending on your personality, they might be. If you're
How much of these programs are also based on the culture of the company, and as you were mentioning, mindset?
a ton of it, Jira, because everybody views Jira as like stodgy and old and that's we don't want that. But then the funny thing is, you watch everybody, they move to a ClickUp and they're like, man, it'd be really nice if we had reports, or what if we had a way to force somebody to fill in a comment every time they change a status? And you're like, I know somebody that does that, for the record. But yeah, it's hugely based off of culture. The companies that I go to where they're like, oh yeah, we're super agile development, and agile, right? What, do you know scrums and sprints? I'm like, I do. Do you know that those don't technically go together? You don't? Okay, don't worry about it. It's fine. It's I gotta be careful. I don't want to shit at anyone specifically here, but it's people choose things based on their culture 100%. And I think what I've noticed is when they get to a certain maturity level, they start to reverse some of those decisions. So, I was at a company a year or two ago where they were bigger in ClickUp. Obviously, that's where I got my experience with it. And by the time I left there, they were already getting to the point where they're like, gosh, this is nice. Like it looks nice and everything, and it feels nice, but it's kind of missing some things. Why don't they fix their damn Gantt charts? Oh no, wait, that was me. Sorry. But it's a maturity thing. So, culture, yeah, important. That's where you make your first choices, but you'll eventually mature your way out of it. So, yeah.
The other piece that you mentioned is about the language, right? So,
yeah,
about the configuration at the beginning and how everybody's speaking on the same language. I feel that when George was talking about Jira and being that very difficult to configure and having different teams in different locations, that is language as well. So you need to set everyone speaking at the same language, having the same configuration, get an agreement, and then we can, let's say that you set the game rules in advance, and then you can play.
Yeah.
The problem is what everybody has their own rules, and they want to do only their things, and that's when things can become very complicated.
Oh,
Right,
yeah.
because one of the things that was a horror show was the fact of searching, because there was no standardized way to nomenclature for the files or the sites. And so there you go, Pepe, exactly language. So nobody had it, and then we were trying to search for something like, what the heck? It's under blah blah, and it's like, I don't know, how did you figure that out?
Yeah, no, definitely. And yeah, sorry, I'm just seeing Pepe. I'm just seeing your message here about Trello and everything. Yeah, that's true. The company that did ClickUp, they moved to ClickUp off of Trello. That was actually their progression. They went, well, we're on Trello, but it's starting to get a little bit difficult to manage, because now we're at 2,300 people worldwide. And I was like, how are you on Trello with 2,300 people? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Make sense.
But it's all right. Things happen. You live, you learn, you make more money. Everybody's happy. So
at the end is also what you said on the agile implementation or something is it has to make sense.
Yep.
If you hear that there is something very cool in the market, if you hear that there is a very nice application here or there, but your culture is not associated to that, if you hear that blah blah blah, it has to make sense. So if it doesn't make sense, it doesn't matter how sexy it can be. You will not succeed.
We need to make
Then
shirts that say that, Pepe.
Yeah, then you have that other group.
It has
that
to
just
make
love
sense.
You hate that other group that just loves new toys. It's like, okay, we're using this. Okay, what's the new tool that we're going to do? Okay, let's do this new tool. Oh, let's do this new tool.
You know what,
let's do
though,
this new
Jor?
tool.
I got to tell you, there is utility in that, especially for bigger companies. And that's kind of one of the things, when you get to a certain size of development group, I always recommend starting an architecture group. And one of the things that I always task them with doing is that. I'm like, no, go play. Go play. Go find all of the new crap that's out there. And do it with the mindset, there's that damn word again, do it with the mindset of, I need to see if there's anything that actually fits the bill better than something we're using currently. And most of the time the answer is no, because, you have to take into account what it's going to take to refactor everything, to use the new thing, so on and so forth. But, sometimes those are the biggest and best changes that you can make. And, the travel company that I used to work for, I was just working on starting one when COVID hit. And they're still doing it to this day, because they're like, oh man, I got to tell you, we started doing it and we realized that half of us were doing the same thing, but we weren't sharing the same code. And we're like, wow, how about that?
Jeez.
That's kind of the point. And, then one group started going off and experimenting with some new React stuff and blah, blah, blah. And they're like, yeah, no, this is great. We wish we would have done this earlier. I'm like, oh, don't worry about it. You're not always ready for that. Like, you have to get to, just like you have to mature your way out of other things, you have to mature your way out of tools and practices, processes, and everything. Like, to Pepe's point, it has to make sense. And it will make sense eventually if it's supposed to. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Don't worry about it. So, yeah.
Cool. I have a question for you.
Okay.
So the idea is, well, for non-technical people, hey, how do we work better with developers? How do we work? Let's say that I have a need. I need to develop this. I need to, I don't know, improve my website. Have some digital marketing on that. I mean, I need to work on some instrumentation. Blah blah blah. So some examples. How do you recommend engaging with the development team or a developer person? Is that more like you give the problem that you want to solve from the business perspective, or that you have like this recipe or a cookie cutter stuff that you need? I want you to do 1, 2, 3, and you execute.
That is a great question. All right, so I'll answer you this way. I'll say it depends on your developer. How about we start with that? It depends on you. It depends on your developer, right? So if you have a developer who you've grown to trust and you're like, hey, I know that you're going to figure this out, whatever, then yeah, you might just take the cookie cutter approach and be like, hey, just go do this. I know you'll understand what I mean. Great. But I think from the perspective of, especially if it's a newer developer to you, if it's a newer company, that my whole little spiel there about going through the pain and everything, that's where it really becomes relevant. The biggest leap that we made at that company, it was a marketing company actually, marketing technology company or whatever. But the biggest leap that we made was a result of the product owner, the product manager, and I sitting down and helping each other understand our world, right? I came out of that before that failed feature, right? I was useless when it came to talking to other people about the product. I pretty much just hid from people. I didn't tell people what I worked on because I didn't know. I didn't know how to. I was like, it's marketing, whatever. I don't care. And with that feature, when that failure happened, again, like, it was all about trying to learn that language together. And he took the time to really walk me through not just what the specific thing was that we were trying to solve, but helping me understand the context around it. And that's really why we had the turnaround. Like, that was the pain that we went through. I had to learn how to do, at least from a conceptual standpoint, marketing. I had to learn the messaging management or whatever the heck it was. Terminology is failing me right now, but I had to learn that stuff. And from my perspective, I went from simply looking at this as a technology problem to seeing it as a problem, right? This is a problem to solve. And yes, technology was involved, but really what I was looking for was I was trying to get to the overall root of the issue. And there were more than one occasions after that moment where I actually caught something he was trying to do, and I said, that's not a good idea because of XYZ. And we came up with new features and everything as a result of that, because now I understood the context. So while I will say, I will reiterate this, it depends on you and your relationship with the developer, absolutely. But if we're talking about like new relationship, new developer, new business, as long as you've hired someone who can internalize this stuff, you want them to understand the problem domain. So take them through the concept as much as you can. They will love it. the travel company that I worked for, I made one of my guys who was struggling a little bit sit down with the team he was supposed to be working on tools for. And he came out of it. He became a rock star. And he's actually told me since then, he's like, yeah, I got to be honest, that was like my favorite thing. Because I went from just, oh, I need to know how to do this Python to, oh, they're losing a lot of time over in this section. I wonder if we could tweak this, and this. And you know, hopefully that's what we're good at as engineers, right? We look at a thing and we go, oh, I think I know how to optimize this. I think I know how to fix some things with this that maybe you didn't think of because you don't know the technology side. So, yeah, get the concept out there, help them understand it, if it's appropriate, if it makes sense. I'm going to steal your phrase. I'm serious. I think we need shirts with that. Jor would wear it. I know he would. Yep.
That's awesome. There's a business, Pepe.
Yeah. Novelty programming T-shirts. I'm pretty sure somebody already does that, though. Somebody has
I've
to.
heard of that. So.
Yeah. There's too many of us. There's dozens of us.
At least. Maybe more.
Hey, Andrew, I have to go, man. This was awesome, man. I just wanted to
Great.
just want to reiterate this was really, really good. Awesome. I really enjoyed it. So, awesome.
Thank you
That's
very
even more
much.
than awesome.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jor.
Take care, man.
Thanks for coming.
Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Andrew.
Yep.
I'm gonna get going as well.
See you, Birch. Thanks for being an example for me.
No problem.
Don't forget your time, April 14, right?
Yep, I'm excited.
Okay.
right, bye.
Bye.
Righty. Thank you, Andrew.